Hello everyone and welcome to Property Technical. Today we will be talking about a story, an event that took place that involves a house and its subsequent bank loan and a person who had a debit card and a bank glitch that allowed him to spend nearly $2 million and got away with it. So stay tuned. So our story begins in a small town in Australia called Goulburn. No one wants to really go to Goulburn voluntarily. What's there in Goulburn? Well, there is the jail. So if someone went to Goulburn, they got taken to jail. So there was a person who used to live in Goulburn. For sake of this story, let me just call him Fred. Not a real name. Fred was a bright young individual. He was quite savvy with money. He had a job quite early in his life at about 14, 15, something like that, and he bought his first property at the age of 19. This young age does beat the national average of people buying property, so as we can tell, he's definitely a bright young chap. Now, what happened is in the year 2008, GFC struck. And the unfortunate circumstances that hit many others hit him as well. He lost his job. And with no way to pay for his home loan, he was dreading that when the time comes, the automatic payment out of his debit account is going to be declined. And the date came. And the bank pulled $500 worth of payment from his debit account into his mortgage account. Fair enough. But what had happened is that his debit account then went to minus 500. Now, a overdraft is part of the account, so nothing unnatural about it thus far. But there's a limit to how much you can go into the negative territory, right? So the next week, he was thinking that surely this time around it will be rejected because he's already at minus 500. And surely it didn't happen. The bank took money from his debit account and put it into his mortgage account. No problems. Being the bright young fellow that he was, he had an idea. He rang up the bank and said, "Can you please transfer $5,000 from my debit account into my home loan account?" Surely at this point he was thinking that this is it. Like, it can't just keep on happening. They're going to find out and they're going to be like, hey, sorry, something went wrong and we'll correct it. We cannot make the transfer because you're already overdrawn. Something along those lines, we would expect that to happen. But instead, the bank staff just happily made the transfer and said, "Thank you very much. It's done." Surprise. So Fred thought, this is odd. So what he did was he this time went to a bank branch and he then proceeded to say, "Can you please transfer $50,000 from my debit account into my home loan account?" Surely $50,000 from a debit account which is already in negative would ring alarm bells. It didn't. They happily took the money out of the debit account, put it in the mortgage account, and he walked out. No alarm bells. Nothing. They did not even so much as say, "No, I'm sorry." Nothing. And this is the bank staff. They're supposed to be looking at things, right? Now things proceeded in similar manner. He was never stopped. Money kept coming out of his debit account, kept on going into the mortgage account. The way things were progressing, his mortgage was paid. His mortgage at the time was $150,000. And now that his house is completely paid off, he hadn't shared anything to anyone up until that point. He had a friend and he wanted to talk to him. He asked, "What should I do? This is my situation." He opened up to him. So the friend, he gave him the most sincerest of advice. The friend told him that, "Listen, Fred, you're young and you just paid off your home loan. Not many of us get to do that. No matter how you ended up with this money, you got to make the best of it. So the only thing we should do is sell the house, take the money, go and party! And that's exactly what Fred did. Sold the house, took the $150,000, went to Gold Coast. Some of you may be wondering, what is Gold Coast? Gold Coast is Las Vegas equivalent of Australia, only much more beautiful. That's right. It's a city made next to an ocean and houses some of the best hotels of Australia, some of the tallest buildings of Australia as well. They have SeaWorld, Movie World, and all that sort of attractions there in one place, and all sorts of venue where you might go to entertain yourself. And that's where Fred and his friend went. So they checked into this penthouse apartment and they started living large. Fred even loaned his friend some money to spend, and they were living the life, right? Until, of course, the money ran out. So when the money ran out, Fred called up his friend, "Hey man, the money I loaned you." Instead, that conversation never took place. The friend knew Fred ran out of money and he was gone. Surprise, surprise, right? So what was Fred going to do? That's where it struck him. That debit card, he hasn't actually used it so far. What about it? So what he did is he opened another bank account, and then he had his PayPal account. So while he cannot pull money out of the debit account because it's already in negative and you can't overdraft out of an ATM, direct debit can work still, possibly, right? So Fred made some transactions using his PayPal account, and sure enough, the money was coming out of that debit account still. And he made some purchases. He withdrew some money as well, put it into his new bank account, and he started spending from there. Given that he can buy things online using PayPal, he started buying stuff. And he went to an auction site and bought himself a nice Maserati. Now the car was in Sydney, so he drove all the way from Gold Coast to Sydney. And in Sydney, he checked into a fancy suite in the Casino Hotel. Again, live it large. So when he was done with Sydney, instead of going back to Goulburn or back to Gold Coast, he just cut himself a ticket to Thailand, and out he goes. In Thailand, it was more of the same party. And when he was done doing party in Thailand, he came back to Gold Coast again. This time, what he did was he made friends with a strip club owner. And the deal he struck with him was that the strip club owner would charge him for various services. The owner will keep 10% and give Fred the remaining 90%. And again, Fred made some new friends, bought himself a Aston Martin, and again he was living in some penthouse. But it all soon caught up with him. One day a message came that contact bank security. And it all came rushing in. What was he going to do? This can't be over so soon, and he can't go back to the life he had before in Goulburn. So what does he do? He goes to Thailand. Again, version 2. And again he starts partying and spending and doing all these things. Apparently, if you party so much, there comes a time that you burn out and don't want to party anymore. I don't know what that feels like. I haven't partied that hard. And he decided it's time to go back to Goulburn, which he did. Remember when I said that he was buying things online? That also went a bit too far as well. He was buying all sorts of sports memorabilia and collectibles and various items of different value. And what he was doing is all these parcels, he was forwarding it to his parents' house back in Goulburn. So when the first parcel arrives, who cares? You have your parcel sent to your mom's house, that's that. But parcels kept on coming one after the other until there was no more room to place things in. So when Fred came back to Goulburn, all these things that he ordered, obviously he took it out of the box and things like that, he gave all this to a friend of his for safekeeping for now, because he knew something's gonna come down crashing, something's gonna happen. And it sure did. One day, a few gentlemen showed up at his door and he was arrested. Now, while in custody, he came up with his defense, like what is he going to say? So the day came when he was appearing in court, and he made his case thus, that on his part, he didn't do any fraudulent behavior. In fact, the money that was given to him was by the bank. And on top of that, the documents that bank submitted to court outlined it very clearly, and the bank stated those events as human error, that the staff of the bank made those transfers on request of Fred by human error. They didn't actually decline. So it's bank's fault. On top of that, the overdraft facility is a part of that debit account. He signed into that. So it was up to the bank to say, no, we cannot give you any more money. You're already overdrawn. But they didn't. And they kept on giving, kept on giving, kept on giving. But now that all the money is spent, they have no way of recouping it, right? The bank pretty much is losing money. So this is what court said, to the effect that what Fred did was definitely immoral. Ethically, he was in the wrong. But what crime did Fred do? And the bank doesn't want to draw too much attention to this case either, because other people, legitimate customers, have accounts with this bank and they have their life savings with the bank and things like that. So they don't want to be making too much fuss out of it. So that is what happened. Fred was allowed to go. Fred walked. Yes, they can't recoup the money because he already spent all this money. He was not sitting on a pile of cash. So at this point in time, it was nearly $2 million that Fred had used up from his debit account, which is now in minus. Well, that's the story for today. Thank you for watching it. I hope you've enjoyed it. In the upcoming videos, we will be bringing you more such stories, and also we will be doing Property Watch and discussing technical things in relation to properties. So I will see you in the next video. Until then, you take care of yourself.